Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's a president, guidance for greatness, move from challenge to change, an author, speaker, coach, and of course a consultant. No other than Mr. Jim Salvucci.
Hey, Daniel, thanks for having me.
Welcome, Mr. Jim. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a lot of my life, so we'll just do a quick thumbnail. But I'm a recovering academic. I worked in higher education as a professor, as a dean, and as a vice president at a bunch of institutions in the U.S., and then moved into the corporate world in 2020 and started coaching and consulting in leadership. And since then, I've become a speaker. I just did a TEDx talk in May. And a week before I did the TEDx talk, I also came out with my new book, Greater Than Great. So lots going on.
Greater than great. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. So, the title Greater Than Great sets a high bar. How do you define a great leadership, and what does it mean to be a greater than that?
Yeah, what the title comes from the introduction actually, which was based on my eulogy for my father. He died in 2023, and he was a leader all his life. I learned a lot about leadership from him. He was a really good man. He had a very kind heart. He tried to help the world, but he wasn't great. He wasn't well known. He was a union leader at one point, and had some notoriety at that point, but nothing beyond that. I mean, he was just an ordinary blue collar worker, but his goodness inside him made him great. So he didn't have a title, he didn't have fame, he didn't have wealth, he didn't have all those superficial measures of his success and the things we measure great leadership with quite often, all too often. What he had was goodness, true, deep down human decency. And my argument throughout this book and throughout my writing is that to start being a great leader, you first have to be a decent human being and you have to apply that value to everything you do. And that's what my dad did. So that's how you become greater than great. You don't need the great title. You need to be good inside to be greater than great.
Your framework is a build on learning, logic, and life. Why these three pillars? What does the each of one contribute that the others cannot, and how do they work together?
Yeah, great question. Nobody ever asked me about my subtitle, so thank you, Daniel. I appreciate that. So, learning logic in life. Learning. I'm an academic. I'm an educator by my training and my trade most of my life, and I consider leadership a form of both learning and teaching. Leaders are great learners. Harry Truman said that leaders are readers. Leaders are constantly learning new things. But one thing that's often overlooked is leaders are also great teachers. They have the same skill sets that great teachers have. In fact, the difference between leaders and teachers is entirely circumstantial. It has nothing. What they actually do is pretty similar if you're doing it well. In terms of logic, everything we do, everything I believe in, is based on logic. I come to my conclusions through experience, but also through trial and error and trying to figure things out, make things work together. So, logic is key to great leadership. It isn't guesswork, it isn't whimsy, it isn't woo woo. It's logic that guides a great leader, logic and values. And then finally, life. Leadership is a lifestyle mindset. It's something that you do throughout your life, throughout every day of your life. You don't stop being a leader when you go home from work, right? You don't stop being a leader when you stop doing the leadership things. You're still a leader, you're still the same person. And a lot of leaders see themselves as being one thing in one part of life and another thing in another part of life. And we talk about work-life balance. That's a misnomer. There is no such a thing as work-life balance. You are the same person throughout your day. If you're having a hard time at home, you're bringing that to work. You have a hard time at work, you're bringing that home. So, and vice versa. If you're having something really good happen, you're going to bring that to work or at home. So life is really key here, and having that mindset, that thinking that I am a leader throughout my day. The values I apply in my leadership, or what I apply throughout my day, is absolutely critical to great leadership.
Mr. Jim, in a world saturated with leadership advice, what void did you see that this specific triad of learning, logic, and life fills?
Yeah, I don't want to trash my fellow gurus. I don't believe in gurus. I'm not a guru really. I don't want to call anybody out, but a lot of leadership books cover the same ground over and over and over again, and they miss the fundamentals. Leadership is built and grows from and is sustained from the fundamentals. So what I write about in this book, and I also have a blog on Substack called On Leading with Greatness that I write every week. um, I talk about the fundamentals all the time. That human decency, going back to values, building your character, right? Leadership is not about strategy. There are leadership strategies, and sometimes I promote leadership strategies with my clients and in my writing. But you cannot be a leader by following a strategy. It won't work. You have to
Yes.
be, again, it's a mindset. I'll use that word. It's a mindset. It's an attitude. It's a way of being. You're not there. There are such things as born leaders, and I would say I'm one. I've been a leader my whole life since I was a kid, but that won't sustain you. You need to make leadership a discipline. You need to study it. You need to think about it. You need to think about your values. It all starts with self awareness. No great leader isn't self aware. You have to be self aware first. You have to build your character. Then, once you've built your character, then you're able to communicate. And your communication, since it's based on your character, it's values based, has measurable meaning. It actually has value itself. And because you have this character, you have this communication, you can then move on to being able to compromise, meeting people part way, right? Compromise is a transaction, it's very transactional. Both parties bring something and both parties lose something. You can't do that without the trust that's engendered by character and through communication. And then finally, once you're able to compromise, then you can do what all leaders need to do, and that's build collaboration. Great leaders build cultures of collaboration, but you can't do that without character, communication, and compromise. Notice those are, I call those the 4 C's of leadership. So character, communication, compromise, and collaboration. And they each builds on the next, but it starts with that character. And too many leadership books, too many leadership, too much leadership advice doesn't focus on that character. They give a little values test. Oh, here's 100 words. Pick out the top 10 that are your values. Now narrow it down to 5. Now narrow it down to 3. Those are your values. And then they move on to the next lesson. What did you get from that? Nothing, right? Well, all great leaders tap into those words. They actually live those words in everything they do.
Mr. Jim, in an era that often values charisma and vision above all, why is it called hard logic and non negotiable pillar for making a true difference? How do you balance logic with intuition or intuition?
Yeah, that's a good question. Logic is, it, so we can think of intuition of 2 ways. One is just it's just your gut. You just do what feels good. But real intuition, successful intuition, is based on experience and based on thought. I'll give you an example. If you drive a car, you do things intuitively, right? You look in
Yes.
your mirrors, you look around. That's all intuition. Now, if I never drove a car before and I relied on my intuition to drive a car, it'd probably go pretty roughly. So, that would not be a good experience. Instead, the intuition you're using is actually built on your experience and your thinking and your logic. right? You see a car to one side and you think, okay, I need to pay attention to that car. That's a logical conclusion. So those two things are not diametrically opposed. They're actually complementary when you think about it.
And Mr. Jin, this is the most intriguing pillar. How does leaders' personal life, their experiences, values, and humanity integrate into their professional leadership to create authenticity and impact?
Yeah, that is what I call the leadership legacy mindset, and this is actually my last chapter, my conclusion of my book, the leadership legacy. Really great leaders think about their legacy from the get-go. They don't wait until the end of their career. They start doing it early on. And when I say legacy, I'm not talking about the money they're going to accrue or the buildings they might build or anything like that. I'm talking about building relationships and teaching, right? Going back to that teaching others to be great leaders. A true leader's legacy is the systems they leave behind, which are often built on logic, and the people who go out into the world and do what they do. Leaders beget leaders. Leaders create other leaders through mentoring, through modeling their behavior, through a variety of means. They teach other people to be great leaders. And my vision is that if there are more great leaders in the world, they'll create other great leaders. And those great leaders will create other great leaders, and so on and so forth. And eventually, we will eliminate all the bad bosses in the world because everyone will be a great leader. It won't happen in my lifetime, but that's my vision. That's my movement.
You advocate for leadership through learning. In a fast moving world, what does a disciplined, strategic learning practice look like for a leader beyond just reading and the occasional book?
Yeah, I mean, books are important, and there's a lot of good leadership books out there. Mine's one of them. Um, and there's a lot of the same old, and some not so great leadership books out there. Some of the most famous leadership books I would not recommend, but that's one way of learning. Another thing to do is get involved in some sort of mastermind with other leaders. That's a great way to learn from other leaders, not just people who are in the same position, by the way. Leadership has nothing to do with your position, it has to do with a mindset. So you could be a leader and never actually have a boss's title. And most bosses really aren't leaders. So, forget that, put that aside. You need to seek out other people who understand leadership. And you do that, like I said, through a mastermind. You can do it through reading. You can do it by taking workshops. But a lot of it is studying, practicing, applying things, experimenting. And that's where a lot of the logic comes in as well. Trying things out, seeing what works. Again, though, this is key. It isn't strategies. You cannot lead through strategies. It starts with your self-awareness. So, one of the most important parts of a leader's discipline is studying the self, learning about the self, recognizing the self, seeing what kind of a person you are, and seeing perhaps what you can improve about yourself to make yourself a greater leader. That's where I would start.
Interesting, Mr. Jim. Interesting indeed. And which of these three pillars do you find most often neglected by otherwise competent leaders?
Uh, I would say the logic piece. A lot of the logic goes by the wayside. I mean, people, have a pretty good idea they're supposed to learn stuff if they're a leader. And, life is, a lot of them understand they do need to apply their leadership values to their life. But there is a certain logic to leadership, right? It makes sense. The logic is not what a lot of people expect. It's not necessarily measurable in that it is a lot. It's very qualitative. I'm not saying there aren't measurements you can use, but a lot of leadership is really just having that basic understanding of who you are and who your team members are and the impact you have on them and vice versa. And you learn that through your logic, through making discoveries, through experimenting, through thinking things through. It makes sense. It has a reality behind it. It isn't just, I did this thing, it worked, it's wonderful. Why did it work? Ask yourself why. Simon Sinek, in a great book I would recommend, Start with Why, um, said you need to ask yourself the question why. That is the key logical question. Another key question is, so what? So you did this and it worked. So what? What are you going to do next? And that helps you progress.
Mr. Jim, as a president, guidance of greatness move from challenge to change, an author, speaker, coach, and consultant. What are your short term and long term goals?
Well, my short term goals are to get out there in the world, get some more speaking gigs. I need to get on more stages. Like I said, I was just on a TEDx stage, which was a wonderful experience, and I want to do some more of that. And I've got some other speaking opportunities and consulting opportunities coming up. I'm fading out the coaching aspect of my role right now, and I'm focused much more on the speaking, but also on the writing. I want to continue to write. So I have that blog I write every week, and that is actually the fodder for my books. My I say books plural because I'm already thinking about my next book that'll be coming out,
Yes.
and so
Look,
that gets me into my longer term goal. But at the same time, I'm also thinking about, what do I want to do? I'm getting close to retirement age, so my long term goal is to retire and know that I've actually have made a difference in the world. That's my long term goal.
looking forward for that book or books, Mr. Jim. And good luck to your goals and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
Don't. It's a rough ride. It took a long time to get here. Yeah, I mean, if you mean like me in terms of their approach to leadership, I mean, take my advice. I mean, be learn who you are, and also be yourself. Be true to yourself. Find out what your values are for real. Don't just look at a list. Really study who you are as a person, what's important to you. The same values will come up again and again. And here's a key part. I didn't mention this, and I should have. Part of that character development, part of that self-awareness, part of your values is your behavior. It isn't just what you think or what you think you believe, it's how you behave. I firmly believe myself that there's no such thing as a good person inside. If someone acts like a jerk, they're a jerk. I don't care what their intentions were. I don't care, what they think inside. I don't care if they work at soup kitchens on Sunday. If they treat people like jerks, then they're a jerk. And that's a truth I hold near and dear. So look at your behavior, not just what you believe you do, but look at what you actually do. And here's another key part of self-awareness. This is very important. How do other people see you? How do they perceive you? Find that out. Look into that.
Yes. And thank you for that advice, Mr. Jim. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yeah, well, I've got many. I mentioned Start With Why. And a book, I'll tell you a book that's very neglected. It's by a man named John Amici, Amaechi. He's in United Kingdom, and he is a very large man. He is very tall and broad and built. He actually played for the NBA. In fact, he was the first British citizen to ever play for the NBA. And and while he was in the MBA, he got a PhD in organizational leadership. I'm sorry, organizational psychology, and he focused on leadership. So he's actually a leadership consultant, and he wrote a wonderful book called The Promises of Giants. And he's saying, as a giant man, there's a certain responsibility he has to take as he moves through the world, and leaders are the same way. There's a certain responsibility leaders have to take for the whole world if you're going to be a leader. It's fantastic book. Very highly recommend it. The Promises of Giants.
Yes, thank you so much for that recommended book, Mr. Jim. And greater than great leadership, something is one is born with, or it can be systematically developed. What is the first step in that development journey?
Yeah, I mean, first off, if you're born with it, you still have to develop it. I call that gut
Yes.
leadership. I did that for many, many years, and then I went from being a faculty member to being a university dean, and I realized the stakes were way too high, and I could not rely on gut leadership anymore. And I
Mm.
started having to treat leadership as a discipline. That first step, though, again, self-awareness. Find out who you are. If you don't do that, you're not going to be true to yourself. When I first became a dean, I one of the pieces of advice I was told by numerous people was that you're no longer a faculty member, you're no longer part of the faculty. You have to distance yourself and you have to act very, very differently. And I wasn't sure how to do that. And so I looked to my boss, who wasn't a very good mentor at all, and I looked at his boss, the president of the university, and he was a horrible leader. And so I didn't really have any success there. So I looked at my peers, and they were kind of flailing around, but I imitated them for a while. I tried to be like them. And at one point, I had this just, it was like a bolt of lightning. It just hit me that I was just miserable and I was treating people miserably and I wasn't being successful in my leadership because I wasn't being myself. And I really thought about what was important to me and I leaned into that. And once I started doing that, all of a sudden, everything transformed. The school I was running suddenly became almost a cultural, well, no, not almost, it became a cultural oasis and a very dysfunctional campus. I mean, I literally had faculty members from other schools come up to me all the time and say, "I wish I were in your school." We weren't doing anything special. We just treated each other in a collaborative way. I couldn't do that if I didn't take that pause and think about how I was portraying my own values and how I need to tap into them to make the next move.
Mr. Jim, if you could have every leader who read your book embody just one principle, what would it be and why?
Yeah, don't be a jerk. That's it. Be a decent human because that's what it comes down to. You can't be someone who's not a decent human and be a leader. It just can't happen. Those are called bullies, and most bosses are on some level bullies. So don't bully people. Don't treat people badly. Um, Treat people the way they deserve to be treated. Okay, that doesn't mean that you sort them out and these people get treated bad, these people get treated well. Treat people well. Let them save face. Don't point fingers first. Find out what's really going on. Don't make judgments first. Don't get angry. There's a special place in hell for bosses who yell. There is no reason to yell, right? If you're raising your voice, you're doing it wrong. So you need to be a decent human being first. If you can't be a decent human being, you will never be a good leader.
Yes. Respect begets respect, people. And how does this approach to leadership criteria or create a ripple effect, transforming not just a leader but the entire organization and its impact on the community?
Now, it goes way beyond that, as far as I'm concerned. It can affect the whole world. Um, like I said, if you're a great leader, your team members will see you. They will see you modeling behavior. Great leaders mentor people. Great leaders teach people. Great leaders guide people. They don't dictate. They don't tell people how to act. They give them guidance as they discover their own values and discover their own selves. They help them with that. And then as those people go out into the world, they do the same thing when they become great leaders. And that helps the organization, it helps the community. There's proof after proof after proof that true leadership creates higher productivity. True leadership actually makes your organization run better. It makes sense. If everybody's miserable, they're not going to work as well. If you're more worried about what time somebody comes in than the kind of work they're doing, that's not going to help their productivity. So those kinds of ideas that thinking about leadership as an end to itself can help the whole organization and eventually the community and the world.
Mr. Jim, very well said and totally, totally empowering. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast law 101 and mental health 101, love letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. So, Mr. Jim, finally, what is the true difference you hope your readers will go on to make in the world after embracing this model?
Well, what I'm hoping is that they recognize that they can tap into their values, become great leaders, and help other people. Very importantly, help other people become great leaders. So, like I said, we can change the world.
We can change the world, people, by producing great leader. Mr. Jim Salvucci, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world.
Thank you for
As
having me.
again, hoping for more and more empowering, great books for leader. And can you please invite our listeners to support your debut book?
Yeah, please do. My book is on Amazon and easily accessible, Greater Than Great. And you can also check out my Substack on Leading with Greatness.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Jim Salvucci because if you support him, as I said, more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Mr. Jim, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.